14 long years in the political wilderness. He will be appointed Prime Minister by King Charles III at Buckingham Palace later today. But Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has conceded Britain's general election after the Labour Party won a landslide victory. As results continue to come in, forecasts, they projected Labour would win the largest majority in the House of Commons since Tony Blair's time in office. My colleague Radhika Iyer has been tracking the latest developments for you. In fact, I'm told she's going to be joining us shortly. She's ready, I'm told. Radhika, 3 cabinet ministers have lost their seats. Grand Chefs, the Defence Secretary, the Justice Secretary, the Education Secretary. The Chief Whip has also lost his seat. It's been a terrible night for the Tories, safe to say, right?
Yes, terrible night indeed. Lost not just important seats, but lost all of Wales. The Conservatives have lost, the chief of the Conservative Scottish leader has lost in his constituency and given way to the SNP. So it has been quite terrible for Rishi Sunak and co. And now, of course, the Conservatives will be scouting for their next leader. But for Labour, it has been extremely a day of vindication, a day when they have felt that after 14 years of Conservative rule, they're ready now to take over. I'm quite confident that Keir Starmer had already made plans for who his cabinet ministers would be and how soon he can start these appointments. And like you rightly said, Parmeshwar, he will now meet with the King after Rishi Sunak formally resigns and then form the government by taking over at number 10 with his wife and 2 children. I'm going to go across to British Indians who have joined me early this morning. Good morning, guys. New era in Britain after 14 years. Shall we start with Nitesh?
Sure.
What's your first reaction?
First reaction, look, we knew what the result was going to be. Everyone knew that Labour Party was going to win. You heard Keir Starmer this morning. He said, country first, party second. And let's hope he means that. Some of his policies are still politicising education. They're still a bit old Labour. But let's hope that he actually delivers on his commitments, reforms public services, makes the country a better place.
Okay. When you say Labour, you mean left?
The left, yes.
Okay. Gautam.
Well, this wasn't a surprise. And we have had Labour giving us glorious time during the Tony Blair years. So I'm positive for the country as a whole. This is a new start. Yes, the Tories have made mistakes. I'm a Tory. We've made mistakes. But look, this is a mature democracy. We're going to have a very smooth handover of power. I think it's a positive for England.
Fantastic. And that's quite the spirit in which Rishi Sunak made his concede speech as well. A mature democracy, says Gautam. Hope Keir Starmer means that country comes first. It's going to be quite a diverse-looking parliament with a variety of voices, isn't it? If you notice, the reform representation is going to be there. I don't know how good that's going to be, but it's a far-right voice in a government which looks like it's going to be left-ish centre. And then there's going to be the Lib Dems who've done so very well. You both, are you first-time voter yourself?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. I have with me a University of Political Science from a student from the University of Edinburgh, political science as a major, and Rihanna, a first-time voter as well. Shall we go to the lady? Rihanna, your reaction and what is your hope for Britain and yourself as a British Indian voter?
Yeah.
And a student?
Yeah, I think like you said, no surprise at all. When we were doing the research before, we kind of saw that Labour was in the lead already. And I think I'm excited to see what this new government has in store for us. I think it'd be really good if they could pay attention to and deal with the issues that have sort of been going on for quite a while now. So, for example, cost of living crisis and everything. I think, obviously, for us, it was a bit of a conflict. We have Rishi Sunak, who is a British Indian as well.
Mm-hmm.
So for him losing Prime Minister to someone who is British, then it was a little bit of conflict for me to decide who to vote for, whether I should stay loyal to, you know, someone Indian or someone who, you know, actually might make a change.
And did you choose change?
Yes, I did.
Okay. You.
I think, yes, tentative to begin with, not sure exactly what to expect, but I'm quite hopeful. I think some of the issues they want to crack down on, especially illegal immigration, and also some of the funding they want to allocate to public services, is quite crucial that they do that. Whether or not they can deliver some of the very optimistic targets they've set for themselves, I'm not sure. Only time will tell. I do think that there's some issues with politicizing education and potentially adding that VAT might, in the long run, have more of a net negative impact than a net positive impact, based on some of the stuff I've read from the Institute of Fiscal Studies. So we can only see what happens, and we can't change the result.
Yes, yes. Okay, thanks. Thanks very much for those initial reactions. Indeed, a sense of almost preparedness, really, for this result, because we've seen that through consecutive polls, exit polls that declared that the Labour was going to form the next government. Almost a sense of also excitement. There is going to be a stable government and that it is not chaotic. Perhaps also diverse representation in the parliament. So with a variety of voices that we hear, my overall takeaway is that it's going to be a nice wait and watch to see what's going to happen next and what difference Keir Starmer can bring with his years of experience as a lawyer turned politician. But mind you, he joined the Labour at the age of 16, so quite someone who's a seasoned veteran leftist Labour, but has the right narrative to say, which is to bring centre progressive vision for the Labour Party over his narrative and leadership as the opposition leader.
Well, Radhika, I must also inform you and our viewers that the Labour Party has indeed crossed that 400 mark. They stand at 401 at the moment out of the 650 constituencies in the UK. Labour currently at 402. The Conservatives have breached the 100 mark. They stand at 108 as we speak at the moment. Scottish National Party up 3 seats from the last time we gave that update. They were at 4. They now stand at 7, while the others, including independents, stand at 98, short of that 100 mark. But Radhika, you know, many people, many in the British public say that there's something earnest about Keir Starmer. He has emphasized that as a collective, the British public have to return politics to public service, show that politics can actually be a force for good, adding that the fight for trust is the battle that defines us as our age. What have been the reactions to Starmer's victory speech and the initial reactions of now him taking over the keys of number 10?
Yes, let me get you those reactions just now. And he, of course, giving this victory speech was obviously a sense of preparation. And the fact that the Conservatives, let me start with you, almost gifted him the controversies, the scandals, the several crises that we've been in over years?
Yes, well, I don't know about gifting, but we've had COVID, we've had Brexit, we've had Boris, we've had a lot of things. Liz Truss. I hear she's coming third in her constituency, not even second. So we haven't gifted him anything. This is, the tide has changed. What are the positives? Positives are we are one of the few countries in the world, apart from India, who's going socialist. We're going left. The whole Europe is going right. So look, the UK does things first, and it's a leader in. It's a world leader. So hopefully this is a sign that we're going back to normal politics for the people. Yes, under Tories we've had a lot of volatility, but I think things should calm down. Politics should be behind us for the people. Here it was a great PR stunt for the last few years.
Okay, great PR stunt, which you can expect of a great politician. What do you make though of the person Keir Starmer?
I mean, we don't know Keir Starmer. I mean, we don't know if he's left, if he's right. The Labour Party has changed a lot in the last 10 years. We had Ed Miliband, we had Jeremy Corbyn, now we've got Keir Starmer. We don't actually know where he sits. We do know that he has said he's pro-business. He said that he's changed the party. He said that it's a new party for everyone. I'm not sure. Only time will tell.
And the business sector which you represent, what's the mood? What are businesses thinking? What kind of are you looking at what the India-UK foreign policy would look like, for instance, under Keir Starmer's leadership?
So the free trade agreement with India has had 14 rounds, yes. And let's hope that with Keir it doesn't have another 14. I think everyone on both sides wants it signed ASAP. Yes. So let's hope they get that done immediately.
Okay. Looking forward to quick decisions. The business fraternity quite looking forward. The person Keir Starmer, you said you chose change over someone who had a persona and a race which you relate to as a British Indian? Why? What appealed you about Keir Starmer and his sense of politics or his manifesto?
I think for me, I don't know Keir Starmer as an individual, obviously, but I think that when I was deciding who to vote for, I was really looking through the policies of each party and kind of seeing which party's policies aligned most with my views and also what I wanted for the future of the UK. Obviously, with the Conservative Party, we've had them for the last 15 years, but through those 15 years, we've sort of seen that they had a lot of scandal, controversy, and then obviously, Brexit wasn't an amazing idea.
You didn't like Brexit?
No, I think it's just made our economy, I don't think it's been good for our economy.
It hurt us more than it benefited.
Yeah,
okay.
Definitely. So I think for me, I was really looking for making a change.
Making a change, yes. My last question to you. As first-time voters, what was going on in your mind? What was your mind space? Did you actually do research like an academician would do? Go through manifestos line by line?
I tried my best. I think as a PPE student, I felt like I had to and I should have done so. And I think one of the biggest issues in modern day democracies is that the younger generations aren't as well versed or educated on what the policies that these parties stand for actually mean and the impact they have on the economy. And that's something I hope that this government decides to further push in the curriculum, because if you look at some of the people my age, they don't understand. They read these articles saying that inflation is very high or that interest rates are not being cut for a long time, but they don't understand the implications for the economy and for themselves. Yeah. And that's a major issue. So I tried my best to read through as much as I could and make the most calculated, reasonable decision on what would be the best result. Yeah.
Okay, great. So policy and manifesto over ideology. Okay. There you go. These are the reactions, really. Keir Starmer as a person, plus the manifestos that were read through by younger generations and by first-time voters and businessmen, of course, looking forward to what Keir Starmer has to say, considering it's been quite a long wait. So I think what is reflecting, like it did in the vote share, is a huge sense of fatigue after 14 years of Conservative rule, scandal after scandal. And I'll hand back just now, Parmeshwar, because like any other day in London, we're under rain.
Radhika, honestly, I can't even tell that you've been up all night giving us these breaking news updates. But as always, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us with the latest from Ground Zero to get some shelter as well. I must inform you that some London analysts are arguing that with this Labour majority, it continues to really double down on that promise of economic stability, growth and wealth creation as far as the UK is concerned. We've got Ambassador Prabhu Dayal in the studio with us. Ambassador Dayal, your first thoughts. Keir Starmer's party has crossed that 400 mark. The exit polls projected it. But as far as the UK's new Prime Minister is concerned, what does it mean for UK-India ties?
Well, I think that India-UK ties will continue in the manner that they have been doing. I don't expect any changes in the relationship. If anything, I think the United Kingdom will work towards a closer relationship. And I think that there are some indications which have been given by Prime Minister-elect Mr. Keir Starmer. For instance, he has said that he would work towards a new strategic partnership with India.
Yes.
He has underlined the fact that one of his priorities in regard to India would be to work on the free trade agreement. And he has said that he wonders why this agreement has got delayed. So if he gives priority to this issue, I'm sure that we will have the free trade agreement in place. In addition, he has underlined that he seeks closer cooperation with India in terms of technology, climate change, and of course, a strategic partnership. He has underlined this aspect. And I think that this will play a very important role in the relations between the two sides. You know, there are some common concerns which the United Kingdom has with India. These concerns are shared. And one concern certainly is relating to supply chains.
Yes.
And the Chinese factor is considered by the United Kingdom as being an impediment in smooth supply chains. And therefore, they are also looking at the possibility of India becoming a substitute for China in certain areas, as indeed there are some other Western countries which have been thinking on these lines. So how the relationship shapes out will be determined by how much continuity there is between what has been perceived as the attitude of Keir Starmer and how he actually implements. But I think that the indications at the moment are good, in particular because he has distanced himself from the position that was taken by his predecessor, Corbyn, who used to be the leader of the Labour Party. You would recall that Corbyn had been pretty harsh in regard to Kashmir. He had said things which were very unpleasant, and these things had not gone down well with India.
Indeed.
And neither had they gone down well with the Indian origin UK nationals. In fact, very significantly, Keir Starmer had something to do with reaching out to the Indian origin British nationals, because he recently visited the Swaminarayan temple, and in fact that is where he launched his idea of a new strategic partnership with India. And we of course welcome him.
PM who says he's an atheist.
Well, significantly, yes, he may say whatever, but his visit to the temple was certainly his outreach to the Indian origin British community, and I think it went down well with them, and there are indications that there will be an effort to work with India in a variety of areas.
Right, Ambassador Dayal, we also have company on the broadcast with us. Pratik Ditani joins us live at the moment. Pratik, you think restoring political stability after years of Tory infighting could actually reinvigorate private investment in Britain under Keir Starmer's leadership?
Yeah, I think the biggest problem Britain has had over the last decade is a change in leadership very regularly. We've had 19 housing secretaries. We've had dozens of other ministers change throughout. The biggest change that Keir Starmer brings is stability and good governance over the next 5 years. If that's in place, Britain becomes a much more attractive proposition for the US, for Europe, and countries like India to do business with once more.
Well, many say that for Keir Starmer, this is going to be a grand wedding, but a very short-lived honeymoon. Can you take us through some of the challenges that lie straight up ahead for the Labour government?
Well, I think that this is what really doomed Rishi Sunak as well. The best day of his time in government was the day he got elected, and it was downhill after then, because he had insurmountable challenges which were on the economic front as well as the cultural front that he himself wasn't able to tackle. So Keir Starmer inherits the highest debt to GDP ratio Britain has had since the Second World War. He inherits a cost of living crisis. He inherits, for the first time, I've been in Britain for more than 20 years, and for the first time I can say that parts of the country look like a broken society. Things don't work, bin collections don't happen on time, there are more people sleeping on the streets, rough.
A crack crisis, less jobs, the list goes on.
Absolutely, absolutely. So these are things that one administration can't really solve. These are problems that have been created over the last decade, and they'll take at least a decade to solve, particularly the debt to GDP problem. And this has been caused actually largely by the previous Prime Minister, Liz Truss. Britain borrowed very heavily during COVID when interest rates were really cheap. They skyrocketed within the space of a few months. So actually Britain spends billions of pounds, about 40 billion pounds a year on debt interest that it didn't anticipate spending just 1.5 years ago.
But Pratik, you think a change of government will magically fill the black holes in the public finances in the next parliament, nor conjure up the thousands of additional medical staff needed for the NHS?
I think that the problem Labour has is that during the campaign, it's been very safe in what it's said. What it's not said is far more important, which is there will be economic pain for all citizens in the UK over the next 5 years. Taxes will have to rise. There are 5 million underemployed people in the UK that have elected to come out of the job market. They need to be encouraged back to work. The NHS is facing crisis. That needs to be fixed. And you can't have British people doing those jobs simply because there aren't enough British people to work in the NHS. Migration, particularly from India, from East Africa and elsewhere, has to be a key part of the solution. The problem there is, now that the far-right Reform Party has got a few MPs in Parliament, they have consistently said that we want to crack down on migration. Illegal migration and legal migration, they've been mixed up in the public debate in Britain.
And many would say a
What
moral
Keir Starmer
panic
really
has
needs to
been
do-
created as far as asylum seekers, the word refugee is concerned, especially as far as the UK is concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a real problem, I think, for British society. We are a liberal, a tolerant nation which welcomes people from across the world. In the last 4 years, we've had refugees from the Ukraine, from the Middle East, from Hong Kong as well, that have, not refugees, but migrants from Hong Kong once China has taken over there. So we're a very welcoming country. This kind of rhetoric is unhelpful for the cultural fabric of the UK. And this is something that Keir needs to fix.
Right. Also, Foreign Secretary David Cameron once had said that his time as Tory opposition leader was 5 years spent just banging his head against the wall. Now his party is braced to go through it all again, Ambassador Dayal?
Well, certainly there are major challenges which will have to be confronted. You referred to the NHS issue. That is something which is troubling the British people a lot. And that requires priority attention. Of course, the new Prime Minister-elect has said that he will give precedence to this issue. But it's not going to go away so easily. And as you said, this problem cannot be met only by what are the available manpower resources. And there will have to be a very close look at how the right kind of manpower could be imported. And certainly India is a country from where there is a possible availability of such resources. Now, at the same time, this migration issue has become a very big irritant. We all know about the Rwanda plan, where a lot of migrants who were there without proper documentation were planned to be shifted, relocated there. But I think the new Prime Minister has made it clear, the Prime Minister-elect, that he will shelve this Rwanda plan and that there will not be any action. But then the problem will still remain how to prevent these illegal migrants from coming over. They cross over through, from France, and there will have to be very strict policing. So I think some of these issues are going to be there. They have to be met. They have to be countered. And of course, closer cooperation with India. If it benefits Britain, if it benefits us, I think it will be very good for us and for everybody.
Starmer has said that his party is going to introduce a border security command. We also have with us senior journalist Vijay Rana. But before we go across to Mr. Rana, we're going to slip into a very quick break and be back with the latest in a moment.
तो बेसिकली अगर आप एंड्रॉयड यूज़ करते हैं या आईफोन यूज़ करते हैं, डजेंट मैटर, आपको दोनों ही ऑपरेटिंग सिस्टम्स में बहुत इजी ऑप्शन मिल जाता है जहां पे यू कैन गो टू द सेटिंग्स एंड वहां से यू कैन म्यूट योर अननोन नंबर्स, या एंड्रॉयड में यू कैन ब्लॉक कॉल्स फ्रॉम अननोन नंबर्स. तो अगर कोई अननोन नंबर जो आपकी कॉन्टैक्ट लिस्ट में नहीं है ट्राइज टू कॉल यू, फोन वोंट रिंग, आप थोड़ा सा सुकून एंजॉय कर पाएंगे. फॉर अ फैक्ट आप ये काम व्हाट्सएप पे भी कर सकते हैं. यू कैन यू नो mute all your calls coming from unknown numbers. ये बहुत अच्छा तो है ही, but I would say it's also very important to avoid these scam calls, because sometimes it's just a normal spam, but sometimes it's scammers calling you, you know, approaching you, just trying to take some money out of pocket. तो उससे बचने के लिए भी it's a nice way for us to avoid any unknown numbers. जैसा मैंने just अभी किया, मतलब I'll turn on the setting. You can do it too. It's a nice tip. Please share with all your friends. Moving next नेक्स्ट बिकॉज हम गैजेट्स की बात कर ही रहे हैं, लेट्स जस्ट गो बैक टू द मोस्ट कॉमनली यूज्ड गैजेट दैट वी ऑल हैव इन आवर पॉकेट्स, द स्मार्टफोन। और अगर हम इसको एनालाइज करें तो आपको लगता होगा दिस इज जस्ट अ डिवाइस टू प्ले गेम्स, वॉच सम कंटेंट, या फोन पे बात कर लो या टेक्स्ट कर लो। बट यू नो व्हाट, there's a lot happening behind the scenes because this small little device is packed with multiple sensors. हो सकता है आपने सुना होगा अबाउट एक्सेलरोमीटर या जायरोस्कोप की कैसे ये सेंसर्स काम करते हैं। जब आप अपनी गैलरी में किसी फोटो को देखते देखते जब फोन को रोटेट करते हैं तो फोटो रोटेट हो जाती है, ऑल थैंक्स टू एक्सेलरोमीटर। या फिर जैसे आप जब गेम्स खेलते हैं तो हाउ यू कैन यूज सम जेस्चर्स, ऑल थैंक्स टू जायरोस्कोप। बट इसके अलावा in a standard smartphone, normally we have from 15 to 20 different kinds of sensors working round the clock to make sure कि जो आपका experience है वो बहुत अच्छा हो जाए। I'll give you a few examples. For example, we have the proximity sensor. ये सेंसर स्क्रीन के ऊपर यहाँ लगा होता है एंड बेसिकली द आइडिया इज टू डिटेक्ट कि क्या आपका फोन आपके चेहरे के पास है या नहीं है। So when you pick up a call and put the phone next to your face, the screen goes dark. या फिर जब आपका फोन पॉकेट में होता है, the screen goes off and बैटरी कंज्यूम नहीं होती है। Second sensor is the ambient light sensor, जो कि आपके फोन में ऑटो ब्राइटनेस के लिए काम करता है बिकॉज इट एनालाइजेज व्हाट्स द एम्बियंट लाइट इज एंड उसके अकॉर्डिंग आपके स्क्रीन की ब्राइटनेस को एडजस्ट करता है। नेक्स्ट वी हैव अ बैरोमीटर। आपको लग रहा होगा बैरोमीटर का फोन में क्या काम है? You know what? It's all for the altitude and ये help करता है paired with GPS to give you a better accuracy and basically weather analysis के लिए भी काम में आता है। And finally एक और सेंसर के बारे में बात करते हैं which is the compass. Compass we all know because we all use navigation. So just to detect that which direction your phone is heading, compass काम आता है to give you the right navigation. And these are just कुछ sensors. इसके अलावा और बहुत सारे sensors हैं packed inside this tiny smartphone. Did you know this? If yes, then amazing. If no, then please let me know by writing at tg@ndtv.com. आपके पास में कुछ ऐसा अगर हिडन अपने गैजेट्स के बारे में कहानी है, I would love to hear all that.
Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV News app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and exclusive news from around the world and more. Download the NDTV app today and get access to the best journalism and storytelling on your smartphone or tablet. The NDTV app. News that matters to you. NDTV proudly upholds its legacy of trust and credibility. According to the prestigious Reuters Institute's Digital News Report 2024, NDTV is the top-most news platform in the country. Number one in both online and offline reach in India. Beating all its competition, NDTV stands for trust.
Friends, it's time now to move into my personal favorite section which is called Ask TG and it's for a reason क्योंकि आप मुझसे सवाल पूछते हैं and I get back to you with full details on all your questions. Let's see the kind of questions we have for this week's episode. You know, it's very easy, it's very convenient and अगर आपके पास में दो अलग अलग phones हैं, essentially I carry two phones और मैं यही करता हूँ so that both my WhatsApp accounts are on both the phones, which is very simple. आप केवल you can utilize the option of linking a device and if you link another device to your main account, essentially you have same WhatsApp दो अलग अलग phones पे। मैं ये करता हूँ so that for example if I'm moving out and I don't want to carry both
Well, the last time Britain traded a Conservative government for a Labour one back in 1997, the mood was so buoyant that the new Prime Minister Tony Blair declared a new dawn has broken, has it not? His successor, Keir Starmer, some critics would say is far less of a showman And even many of his supporters feel pessimistic about Britain's future prospects, considering what he's inheriting. Yet, the scale of Sir Keir Starmer's victory today appears comparable to Blair's landslide. Since Brexit, politics in Britain has been a clown show, many would say. And today, its voters decided it was time for the circus to move on. We have senior journalist Vijay Rana also with us on the broadcast. Thank you so much, Mr. Rana, for joining us. Do you agree that a simple summary of this election is that people wanted the Tories out and hence voted tactically to do so?
Yes, you are absolutely right. The way Tory party has behaved in last few years, people were not at all happy. First of all, everything was going out of hand. NHS operation queues were lengthening. There were resource problem all over the economy. There was a cost of living crisis. The petrol prices are highest in Europe. The energy bills are highest in Europe. Interest rates were skyrocketing. So Britain has seen some really, really tough times, particularly after COVID. And the result was inevitable. And besides that, the worst thing which happened within the Conservative Party was that it had become a game of musical chairs. 5 prime ministers in last 14 years, 7 chancellors of exchequers, and 88 foreign secretaries. And nobody was, it looked like that nobody was with Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. The party elders did not support him fully. The grassroots didn't believe in his leadership. So he was a lone piper. And the defeat was inevitable the way Conservatives have behaved in past few years.
But you know, Rishi Sunak's early policy blitz, including that compulsory national service for young people and guaranteed increases to state pensions, you believe it failed to budge the polls and revealed the narrowness of the base to which he was actually appealing? Many say the Tories, the party of business, have actually become the party of retirees.
Well, you may be right in one way, but the Rishi Sunak's problem was that all these policy announcements were never discussed in detail within the party. So all of a sudden, he just announced this national service plan. Even the election, I'm sure that he didn't take party with him. And he just suddenly one night woke up and announced the election. Nobody was happy with him because everybody was expecting that the elections will happen sometimes in October. So his party was not at all prepared to face electorate at this time. There should be some credit given to Rishi Sunak that he really worked hard on the front of inflation, which has come down from 11% to 2%. But as I said, that he was a lone piper. His party, he didn't believe in his leadership. And meanwhile, 15 years, the electorate has a conservative fatigue. They just wanted to have a change. And the main beneficiary of that, the desire for change in Britain is Keir Starmer tonight.
Right, and that's what the numbers have proven. In fact, I must inform our viewers that the Labour Party has in fact reached that 410 mark. The Conservatives have crossed 112. They stand at 113 as we speak. But the Labour Party has reached that 410 mark, as was predicted by the exit polls. But when asked where the Tories went wrong, Ambassador Dayal, Jacob Rees-Mogg said that there were issues changing the leader, adding that voters expect the Prime Minister they have chosen to remain the Prime Minister and for it to be the voters who decide when that person is changed. You think Boris Johnson was a better fit to lead the UK in comparison to Rishi Sunak? And this is keeping in mind that Boris actually relied on record in Parliament.
Well, we all know that Boris Johnson faced the Partygate scandal.
Yes.
And that certainly impacted his credibility and his image. So when they changed to Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister, I think the Conservatives did absolutely the right thing. Unfortunately, there has been a lot of infighting within the Conservative Party.
Yes.
And that's now a matter of public knowledge. There have been some top-level Conservative Party leaders who have defected to the Labour Party. And there have been some others who have been very vocal in their criticism of Rishi Sunak. So this infighting certainly affected the party's morale, as also its ability to hold on to power. And for this reason, I see what the landslide has been. This landslide wouldn't have happened if the Conservative Party had stayed more united.
Right.
Of course, I must say that there are serious challenges which Rishi Sunak was facing and which are not going to go away. Certainly, the economy is in bad shape. The debt to GDP ratio is low. There is, of course, the problem of the NHS, which you mentioned a little while ago.
Net
There are
migration.
long queues for ambulances or hospital beds. There is this problem relating to affordable housing.
Yes.
So these problems are not going to be going away so easily, as also this issue of illegal migration, because there are lots of migrants who try to cross over from France. So unless there is very, very strict policing and new steps are taken, this problem also will be something that the new government will have to confront. So in a nutshell, if the Tories had stayed more united, they would have been better positioned to tackle the problems, but these problems are going to confront the new government also.
In fact, Ambassador Dayal, as we touched upon it very briefly during the break, the outrage over what's happening in Gaza. Starmer's take, do you think it's somehow impacted him and his party as far as certain Muslim-dominated areas within the UK are concerned?
Well, Keir Starmer has certainly indicated that he will stop the supply of arms to Israel. And surely that is a signal to the Muslim population within Britain, as also to the wider Islamic world. He has also given indications that he would like to see that the Palestinian state is given recognition by the United Kingdom. So there are very, very clear signals that the new Labour Party leadership has been giving out, that it wants to change the policy that has been followed in regard to the Gaza conflict and do everything possible to send a signal to the Palestinians that he will do very, very positive things as far as they are concerned.
Right, let's also rope in Mr. Rana at the moment. Sir, Ed Davey's photogenic publicity stunts, they began with the paddle boarding as we had seen in the Lake District. They finished days before the vote with a bungee jump in front of a reluctantly impressed press pack. These attention-grabbing antics, they seem to have been rewarded, right? With an estimated 61 seats for the Lib Dems, which is a huge improvement since the last election.
Yes, exactly. That's very interesting. Interestingly, their vote share has only gone up by 0.6%. But this is the best result. You know, the subtext of this election is very interesting, that how ground level arithmetic can change the scenario. For example, Labour vote share has gone up by only 1.4%, and their seats have they've got almost 200 extra seats than the last time. They've crossed the 400 mark. And the main, the villain for the Conservative Party in this election is Reform Party. They've got about 14 or 15% votes, but in Parliament they have only 4 seats. So this is very interesting. In fact, in 124 seats, Reform vote is greater than the winning margin of the Tory rivals. So it's very interesting. It's the Reform Party which, and this 15% electorate who have voted for the Labour Party were naturally Conservative voters. So it's very interesting that just 1.5% rise in vote share and Labour has crossed the 410 mark. So this is a very interesting subtext. It is the Reform UK that has spoiled the game of Conservative Party. Had they not been the main player in this game, the Conservative defeat would not have looked so bad tonight.
Well, thank you so much for highlighting those very crucial statistics. Nigel Farage has already served the notice that his party would actually be turning its guns on Labour. But let's just quickly take a look at the headlines as far as the UK is concerned. We have headlines emerging from the UK after Labour's landslide victory. The Daily Record says it's the dawn of a new era. The Mirror says, here we go. Rhyming with here we go. The Independent says landslide with an exclamation. We've got the Daily Express saying it's a crushing blow to the Tory party in an election wipeout. The Daily Mirror calling it an election wipeout. Daily Record, as I mentioned already, calling it the dawn of a new era. Mr. Rana, Nigel Farage has said he's part of a similar phenomenon to that misogynistic influencer Andrew Tate, as he claimed that there were forces in society trying to stop young men from being young men. Is this something that the UK obviously has found, and the Reform Party has obviously found an audience in the UK for this? But as we speak now, beyond that 13 projected mark for the Reform UK, do you think that they'll be getting lucky, and will they be a sort of obstacle as far as the opposition benches are concerned?
I don't think they will, pose a genuine threat to the Labour Party, but they are, as there's a term in India which is very interesting, it's called the vote katua, as we call it in Indian languages. They've performed their role, and I don't think they have a permanent role in British politics. When the things are normal, the British politics will return to its main features. That there will be two parties, Conservative and Labour, the main claimant of the power. Lib Dems will, of course, be playing a role, but I have been here in this country for the last 40 years. Barring 5 years, they have not been part of any government. So they will be there around 7, 8 or 10% vote share. So I don't think the permanent features of the British politics are going to change because of this verdict. These are extraordinary times. Who would imagine a prime minister of Indian origin in Britain? Who would imagine the crisis like COVID? And before that, I think the Conservatives, the Brexit was the biggest act of self-harm this country did to itself. And that was, again, a Tory fascination. In fact, James Cameron was in no pressure to call this Brexit referendum. So I think it was a self-inflicted wound that has really damaged the Conservative Party as well as the British economy in a big way. So I think we have seen some extraordinary times. We have seen a prime minister like Boris Johnson, who was known for his erratic behavior. Yes, he was very popular among the Conservative grassroots, but hoping that he will be a disciplined prime minister playing politics by rules would be a bit too much. So we have seen some extraordinary times. In fact, not only Britain, I see a crisis of leadership in the entire West. You see, in America, there are two 80-year-olds fighting for the next presidency. We have no towering figures like Margaret Thatcher or Angela Merkel. So there has to be some sort of thinking within what's happening to the political leadership in the West. So we are living in some extraordinary times when the basic, ground level rules of British politics as well as the Western politics are changing, in a very interesting way.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Rana, for joining us with that valuable insight. It's always great to hear your perspective. We also have Global Affairs analyst Michael Bosu on the broadcast with us. Thanks so much, Michael, for making time for us. I mean, I don't think at this point anyone is shocked with the result. But Michael, you think a change of government in the UK will magically fill the black holes in the public finances in the next parliament, or conjure up the thousands of additional medical staff needed for the NHS? How soon can we see changes appear?
Good to be with you. I think these policies will take a long time to work their way through the system. And, what often happens in these types of elections in Western democracies is once the incoming leader looks at the books, what was left behind, oftentimes they're shocked at how the budget...
You're being polite here by saying oftentimes they're shocked.
Yeah, oftentimes they're shocked. So, we have to take that into account. But I think there will be a pressure on the new leader, Mr. Starmer, to show results, especially you mentioned the NHS, those long waiting lines. I mean, I hear horror stories from my friends in the UK of how bad the system is. Also, things like the Royal Mail scandal, which is still unfolding itself. But I think what everyone is looking for is a cleanup of, the ethics scandals, lying to the public, that sort of thing. They're demanding big change.
Well, many say that for Keir Starmer, it's been a big, grand wedding, but he's actually going to have the shortest-lived honeymoon. Is that something you agree with?
Not necessarily, because that has been predicted for other incoming leaders who have come in with, low expectations. Look, you can't even find the words to say how monumental this is after, 14 years or whatever. So there's going to be a lot of pressure and expectation on him. But I think, coming from his background as a lawyer, he is relatively new to politics. I think he does have such a majority now. You have really a great pick of, people elected, politicians elected to form a cabinet. So I think we can keep our expectations pretty high.
Right. Well, we are hopeful. I'm told Mitali Mukarji is also going to be joining us in a short while from now. But Ambassador Dayal, Labour has stormed into Downing Street after securing their required 326 seats. They actually stand at about 410 the last time we checked, with the Conservatives actually limping to heavy losses. Many in India remain curious about what this means. The Labour, as you mentioned, has said the Labour 2.0 under Keir Starmer is looking at a renewed strategic relationship with our country, and this could be across areas of artificial intelligence, security, even semiconductor manufacturing.
Yes, indeed. Keir Starmer has very clearly said that he wants to work towards a new strategic partnership with India. And he has spelled out various aspects of this partnership. Of course, he has clearly made it evident that he wants the free trade agreement to be concluded because it would be to the advantage of both countries. But he's also highlighted issues like artificial intelligence, technology, climate change, and there are reasons to believe that in regard to immigration-related issues also there will be due attention paid to sorting them out. So I think all in all the relationship with India will be proceeding in the right direction as it has been doing. I don't think there will be any change of direction in this regard. And one reason is that both the countries realize that there is a common good in a closer partnership. And India is now regarded as a major economy. It's already the 5th largest economy and working towards becoming the 3rd largest. So countries like the United Kingdom would find it profitable for themselves to have India as a close economic, scientific partner.
In fact, I'm told we have a member of the Reform UK party joining us live at the moment. Tarun Gulati has joined us on NDTV. Thank you so much, Mr. Gulati, for making time for us. Nigel Farage
Thank you so much for having
has
me.
actually been elected as the MP for Clacton, finally succeeding in getting a seat in Parliament at his 8th attempt. What are your first reactions?
I think that's excellent news. The Labour will find him a tough adversary sitting on the opposition benches, and our party stands for reform. We had an excellent contract set out with, we don't call it a manifesto, we call it a contract for the people. And whilst we may have got 4 members of parliament at the moment, don't forget it's a startup. In other words, the party is very new. And I just got a ticket only about 1 month ago. So in that context, I think it's excellent results. We've got a large vote share, which will make a difference. So people have spoken. And the Conservatives have been virtually decimated. And the Labour indeed has won a landslide victory.
Well, your leader has already served notice that his party would actually turn its guns on Labour. But Mr. Gulati, Nigel Farage has said he's part of a similar phenomenon to the misogynist influencer Andrew Tate, who was also behind bars, as he claimed that there were forces in society trying to stop young men from being young men. People who've defected from your party have called him a bigot, a misogynist, a sexist. Are you proud of your leader?
I think all that what you're alluding to is untrue in many ways, because the press has sort of trained their guns on Mr. Farage and indeed a lot of us. It's very untrue. Indeed, there was a vetting agency that was responsible for, getting the candidates vetted before they were selected. There are some who may have said certain things, but the party stands for the people. The party, you can imagine, you don't get those many votes if the people are not troubled with various issues, from cost of living crises to good affordable housing to security and safety, which is currently at its lowest ebb. So I think I look at they even use the word racist, but then when they look at me, I had a prime ticket as a candidate for the cities of London, Westminster. I may not have won, but you can imagine those are the sort of candidates that sort of led the fray in all the seats. So I don't think the media has been fair, and I think we've got our work cut out in terms of making sure. They wouldn't say that now. They didn't expect him to win, as you can imagine. But he's won with a big majority, and he's got a good amount of vote shares. And so all our candidates have come second or third in all the seats.
Well, credit where credit's due, because Nigel Farage makes us realize you try again till you succeed. But in the UK, Reform, your party, sees the Tories' tax-cutting pledge of £17 billion and raised its pledge to £90 billion, plus an additional £50 billion for more spending. That's actually reminiscent, many would say, of Liz Truss's infamous mini-budget, which sent markets spiralling.
No, I think that's again untrue, because the media has, at least the Indian media, has been speaking with a lot of the conservative members of parliament and others, and they've been spinning this. In fact, all our sort of initiatives were costed. We believe, in fact, for instance, we would raise the minimum threshold for taxes to 20,000 from where it currently stands. That would bring out 7 million people from paying taxes and putting 1,500 in everybody's pocket. We would obviously abolish the BBC, the fees. And that's where BBC has come out feeling that they should block some of our sort of coverage and things like that. And we blocked them as a result. We're also looking at businesses where business rates need not be paid by the SMEs, raising the threshold for VAT. And indeed, immigration was a key issue, because we get a lot of people coming in, and it's an island ultimately. So we do need services like the doctors and indeed nurses.
Yes.
So we need skilled workers, legal workers, but ultimately you got to call the shots where people come in, through the boats. So our idea was to stop those boats, and the plane to Rwanda never took off for the Conservatives.
Right, Mr. Gulati, thank you so much for joining us. We hope that those projections do come true for your party. But Nigel Farage will be a happy man going to bed today. We also have Mitali Mukarji with us at the moment. We've been waiting for you, Mitali, eagerly for your view. For the Tories, we know the result, though widely predicted, is crushing and a disastrous end to Rishi Sunak's audacious snap election gambit. But is it fair to say the Conservatives ended up on the brink of a historic loss, the way Hemingway described going bankrupt, gradually and then suddenly?
Thank you for having me. I don't think it's sort of unfair to say that. I think it's living history as we speak. We are still counting, and there's about 12 seats to go, but this is complete annihilation of the Conservative Party. Labour is set to win with a rousing mandate. I was interested to hear before the points being made by Reform, because they have made some inroads, but ultimately they've won 4 seats, as has the Green Party, and I hope there will be some time and space to profile that as well. Also, a very, very strong showing by the Liberal Democrats, which just goes to show that in this election, I think the key is the fact that this was less about bringing Labour in and much, much more strongly about voting the Conservatives out. And you could see that. You could see that in the run-up to the polls in terms of the mood in the United Kingdom. And you could see that in surveys as well, where the number one reason in many Ipsos surveyed polls was that they would like to vote the Tories out. And that has happened in resounding fashion.
In fact, Mitali, I'm told we need to take an urgent, quick break. We're back in a moment with the latest updates. Do stay tuned.
बेसिकली अगर आप एंड्रॉयड यूज करते हैं या आईफोन यूज करते हैं, डजंट मैटर, आपको दोनों ही ऑपरेटिंग सिस्टम्स में बहुत इजी ऑप्शन मिल जाता है जहां पे यू कैन गो टू द सेटिंग्स एंड वहां से यू कैन म्यूट योर अननोन नंबर्स, या एंड्रॉयड में यू कैन ब्लॉक कॉल्स फ्रॉम अननोन नंबर्स। तो अगर कोई अननोन नंबर जो आपकी कॉन्टैक्ट लिस्ट में नहीं है ट्राइज टू कॉल यू, फोन वोंट रिंग, आप थोड़ा सा सुकून एंजॉय कर पाएंगे। फॉर अ फैक्ट आप ये काम व्हाट्सएप पे भी कर सकते हैं। यू कैन म्यूट ऑल योर कॉल्स कमिंग फ्रॉम अननोन नंबर्स। ये बहुत अच्छा तो है ही, बट आई वुड से इट्स ऑल्सो वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू अवॉइड दीज स्कैम कॉल्स, बिकॉज समटाइम्स इट्स जस्ट अ नॉर्मल स्पैम, बट समटाइम्स it's scammers calling you, approaching you, just trying to take some money out of pocket. तो उससे बचने के लिए भी it's a nice way for us to avoid any unknown numbers. जैसे मैंने just अभी किया, मतलब I'll turn on the setting. You can do it too. It's a nice tip. Please share with all your friends. मूविंग नेक्स्ट, बिकॉज हम गैजेट्स की बात कर ही रहे हैं, लेट्स जस्ट गो बैक टू द मोस्ट कॉमनली यूज्ड गैजेट दैट वी ऑल हैव इन आवर पॉकेट्स, द स्मार्टफोन। और अगर हम इसको एनालाइज करें तो आपको लगता होगा दिस इज जस्ट अ डिवाइस टू प्ले गेम्स, वॉच सम कंटेंट, या फोन पे बात कर लो या टेक्स्ट कर लो, बट यू नो व्हाट, there's a lot happening behind the scenes because this small little device is packed with multiple sensors. हो सकता है आपने सुना होगा अबाउट एक्सेलरोमीटर या जायरोस्कोप की, कैसे ये सेंसर्स काम करते हैं। जब आप अपनी गैलरी में किसी फोटो देखते देखते जब फोन को रोटेट करते हैं तो फोटो रोटेट हो जाती है, ऑल थैंक्स टू एक्सेलरोमीटर। या फिर जैसे आप जब गेम्स खेलते हैं तो हाउ यू कैन यूज सम जेस्चर्स, ऑल थैंक्स टू जायरोस्कोप। बट इसके अलावा in a standard smartphone, normally we have from 15 to 20 different kinds of sensors working round the clock to make sure कि जो आपका experience है वो बहुत अच्छा हो जाए। I'll give you a few examples. For example, we have the proximity sensor. ये सेंसर स्क्रीन के ऊपर यहाँ लगा होता है एंड बेसिकली द आइडिया इज टू डिटेक्ट कि क्या आपका फोन आपके चेहरे के पास है या नहीं है। So when you pick up a call and put the phone next to your face, the screen goes dark. या फिर जब आपका फोन पॉकेट में होता है, the screen goes off and बैटरी कंज्यूम नहीं होती है। सेकेंड सेंसर इज द एम्बियंट लाइट सेंसर, जो कि आपके फोन में ऑटो ब्राइटनेस के लिए काम करता है, बिकॉज इट एनालाइजेज व्हाट्स द एम्बियंट लाइट इज एंड उसके अकॉर्डिंग आपके स्क्रीन की ब्राइटनेस को एडजस्ट करता है। नेक्स्ट वी हैव अ बैरोमीटर। आपको लग रहा होगा बैरोमीटर का फोन में क्या काम है? You know what? It's all for the altitude, and ये help करता है paired with GPS to give you a better accuracy and basically weather analysis के लिए भी काम में आता है। And finally एक और सेंसर के बारे में बात करते हैं, which is the compass. Compass we all know because we all use navigation. So just to detect that which direction your phone is heading, compass काम आता है to give you the right navigation. And these are just कुछ सेंसर्स। इसके अलावा और बहुत सारे सेंसर्स हैं packed inside this tiny smartphone. Did you know this? If yes, then amazing. If no, then please let me know by writing at tg@ndtv.com. आपके पास में कुछ ऐसा अगर हिडन अपने गैजेट्स के बारे में कहानी है, I would love to hear all that.
Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV News app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and exclusive news from around the world and more. Download the NDTV app today and get access to the best journalism and storytelling on your smartphone or tablet. The NDTV app. News that matters to you. NDTV proudly upholds its legacy of trust and credibility. According to the prestigious Reuters Institute's Digital News Report 2024, NDTV is the top-most news platform in the country. Number 1 in both online and offline reach in India, beating all its competition. NDTV stands for trust.
Friends, it's time now to move into my personal favorite section, which is called Ask TG, and it's for a reason, क्योंकि आप मुझसे सवाल पूछते हैं and I get back to you with full details on all your questions. Let's see the kind of questions we have for this week's episode. it's very...
Well, in France, the party of Marine Le Pen is one step away from taking power in parliamentary elections for the first time in the Republic's modern history in a vote this Sunday. But that trend was on show in the UK too, but not to the same extent as elsewhere. Farage's 13 projected seats, well, the Reform UK is meant to perform better than expected. The Labour stands at 410 as expected. The Conservatives at 118. The exit polls had projected that they'll touch the 131 mark. SNP at 8 as we speak. Others, including independents, have actually breached that 100 mark. They stand at 103 as we speak. Mitali, Nigel Farage, he's been doing quite well. I mean, 8th time lucky, who would have thought? But he has said he's part of this similar phenomenon to the misogynist Andrew Tate, who's quite an influencer and has garnered quite a following. He's also been called a misogynist, a bigot by his own people who've defected actually to the Conservatives. Someone like this, is he poised to be a bit of an obstacle as far as the opposition benches are concerned?
Well, I think the first lesson to take away for all political parties and political leaders is that misinformation comes from the top. And Nigel Farage has been one of those politicians who has made consistently extremely irresponsible remarks. Having said that, I think it's important to put into context what we're looking at here. This is a historic win for Labour, something we haven't seen since the Second World War. As we speak, they're cruising past the 400 mark. Interesting that they have done it, and it didn't quite work out in India as planned. I think Nigel Farage is honestly a side story. He has won 4 seats. It is reflective as well in terms of the seats that they've won, such as Clacton, that this is the same population and space that voted to exit during the Brexit vote. Yes. There is certainly representation that needs to be voiced here. There is certainly a space in the population that is not feeling heard, but I don't think that is the core story. The core story is the severe and rank incompetence of the Conservative Party that came to, almost sort of a nuclear fission point as people stepped out to vote. And the big question from here on is, what is the sort of economic key agenda for the incoming Labour government? What is it that they want to take on first? And I think the Reform Party will be sort of represented in Parliament in a few seats. As I mentioned earlier, will the Green Party, as will the Liberal Democrats. So what we're looking at this point in time, 14 years after having not seen this, is an extremely liberal space really in Parliament for discussion.
In fact, many say that besides the Labour and Keir Starmer, the only person enjoying the election results so far appears to be Ed Davey. And we've seen from paddleboarding to bungee jumping, it seems his gimmicks seem to have worked beautifully now that the Lib Dem leader's actually eyeing his party's best result for a century, as the BBC has projected. Dozens of yellow seats and a big uptick if we compare their result to 2019.
Yeah, I mean, look, a lot of politicians have managed to use social media and other tools quite efficiently. Actually, Nigel Farage has been one of those who stood out in terms of his TikTok campaign and how that resonated with people in terms of the views that it was generating and the engagement it was getting. I think it's important, again, to nuance what's happened with the Liberal Democrats, which is that they have furthered their performance in every seat that has traditionally been a Conservative seat. As I mentioned earlier, I think the clear outcome over here is that it's an overwhelming mandate to remove the Conservative Party, which is why you're beginning to see growth in other parties like the Liberal Democrats. As they say, an election is for a government to lose and not an opposition to win. And in this case, it has been an overwhelming loss for the Conservative Party. As we speak, Liz Truss, for the first time in 100 years, I think, is a former Prime Minister who has lost her seat. The same thing has happened in several seats that were formerly held by Prime Ministers, whether it is David Cameron or Boris Johnson. I think it is a searing indictment of the kind of leadership the Conservative provided for the country and the mismanagement that happened under it.
Right. Also, Mitali, we have reactions from the outgoing Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and Labour's leader Keir Starmer, who's going to be the 58th Prime Minister, British Prime Minister. Let's just listen into those.
Can I start by thanking the returning officer and all the team who've been working here at the count and at the polling stations today. You make our democracy possible. I'd also like to thank the police who have ensured that we can conduct this ballot here in North Yorkshire, but also across the country in safety. On this difficult night, I'd like to express my gratitude to the people of the Richmond and North Allerton constituency for your continued support. Since I moved here a decade ago, you have made me and my family feel so at home, and I look forward to continuing to serve as your Member of Parliament.
In this room, right here, beats the heart of our democracy, not in Westminster or Whitehall, but in town halls and community centres up and down the country, in polling stations and voting booths, and most of all, in the hands of the people who hold the power of the vote. It all starts here. And it starts with you. Change begins in this community, with the people who came together to make life better, like the fantastic councillors who work so hard for our area.
Let's revert to Mitali, who's with us at the moment. Mitali, in terms of the immediate challenges for Keir Starmer, what would you say are some of the most pertinent immediate challenges that await the Labour government?
Well, front and centre, it's the economy. And that, I think, has been the single biggest breaking point. The damage began with Brexit in 2015 and 2016 on the shock decision to exit the European Union. Since then, there's been sort of double trauma that came in with COVID and the Ukraine war as well. It is no surprise that the economy has been in a very, very precarious state. And I think the biggest focus from here on will be rebuilding that. Within that, I think there's a bigger story to take away, not just for the UK, but for other governments that have either got a mandate or will be heading to the polls soon, which is that there has been extreme housing crisis and there has been an extreme cost of living crisis. I think that is doubly so for those who are in the socio-economically deprived sector. There were stories and there were reports of how many more people were leaning into food banks. This has hit people at a very, very granular level where the cost of living in terms of your household costs were really going up. Even as we speak, at the start of this year, food costs were more than 25% higher than what they were in 2022. Energy costs were rising because of the Ukraine war. And I think that will be top on Keir Starmer's agenda in terms of how he fixes this cost of living crisis, but also rebuilds the economy. The other one, I think, is the completely crumbling public and social infrastructure, something the UK has actually built quite successfully over the years. The NHS needs desperate support at this point in time, ditto for public infrastructure and transport. And I think all those will have to be top of priority. There was a lot of, well, not pushback, but there were questions raised to Keir Starmer about how he was set to get a historic mandate. And was he looking to do something quite grand and something, quite large in terms of building a future legacy? But I think at this point in time, the best thing to do for this government is put one step before the other and really look at rebuilding what is crumbling in parts of public infrastructure.
Absolutely. I think you've captured it absolutely perfectly. Keir Starmer has also declared that Labour would actually seek a closer relationship with India and the British Indian community as well. After many Diwalis have come and gone, you think this is the year that the UK and India go ahead with a free trade agreement?
Well, look, I mean, who's to say? It's in its 17th round of negotiations. I think there are several sticking points over there for the United Kingdom, and they have been on record to say this. India has been quite difficult in terms of discussions with free trade agreements, which is a reputation that India has had. There is also the memories of RCEP, where India decided to step away. There are several sort of critical categories under discussion here: health, security, defense, all of that comes up. And I'm not sure whether Labour will now approach with the same gusto as they might have earlier. I think the truth of the matter also is this is not the same mandate that Prime Minister Modi had in his second term. So I think Labour will watch carefully to see how they would like to proceed. On India's side, I think they should also be cautious because visas are going to be a point of debate. This is a space where there is some sort of bipartisan agreement. There is less and less inclination to look at temporary worker visas or lesser skilled worker visas. And I think the emphasis now will be on outstanding global talent. So I think visas are certainly going to be a sticking point. This has to work for both governments for it to be really successful. Yes. And exports from the UK into India have actually been coming down. That's something they would want to correct. But I think the larger takeaway in terms of what you point to on, what's happening with the diaspora is also interesting because traditionally, and many years back, this was a Labour voting space or a voting bloc. Over the years, with upward mobility and better socioeconomic status, the Indian diaspora actually started leaning towards the Conservatives.
Yes.
But in the most recent polls, it was clear that more than 58% were looking to vote out the Conservatives and vote in Labour. Again, cost of living crisis for the Indian diaspora as well.
Well, Mitali, thank you so much for joining us on NDTV. It's always a pleasure to hear your perspective. Really appreciate you taking time out for us. In fact, earlier today, Lord Joe Johnson spoke to us at NDTV regarding the Tories' absolutely dismal performance and their wipeout. Here's what Lord Joe Johnson said.
Thank you so much, Lord Johnson, for speaking to NDTV and NDTV World.
Morning.
It's been a somber night for you, but talk to us about the thoughts that are going in right now within the Tories right now in terms of where do they go from here? What could be the possible next steps to revive, revamp, and re-energize the party?
Well, it depends on who's left in Parliament when the dust settles on this election. The night has been very tough for the Conservative Party, as you say. It looks like being the party's worst performance for many decades, and we can safely say that. And the party will be severely reduced in numbers, potentially to around 131 seats if the exit poll prediction is correct, from well over 300. So a huge loss of personnel in Parliament for the Conservative parties. And it's from that group of MPs that the new leader will eventually be installed once Rishi Sunak has commenced a leadership contest within the party. So a lot depends on who's still left in the frame. Clearly there are some people who may have ambitions to put themselves forward, who we know are back in Parliament. But it's going to be a battle for the identity and a battle for the direction of the Conservative Party that now takes place over coming weeks.
Absolutely. And as the results poured in, some of them, most of these results are in line with what the exit poll numbers said. But were there some in the Tory camp who were still hoping against hope that when Rishi Sunak announced these elections, he had some game plan and that was going to see and that would feature in those results?
Rishi Sunak's game plan, whatever it was, can't have been to result in this general election picture that we have this morning. This has been the worst campaign in British political history. Conducted by Rishi Sunak. So he bears a significant responsibility for what has happened. And this is a catastrophic rout for the Conservative Party, be in no doubt about that.
Absolutely. And I think he did take that responsibility in that speech. But what, according to you, were the main reasons for the defeat being the way it was? Much worse than what any would have imagined. What would you think the three factors were?
Well, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, former Prime Minister, I should now say, made the #1 campaign promise to stop the boats. So he raised the salience of an issue to which he didn't have an answer. So in political terms, that was an appalling strategy because he said repeatedly, we will stop the boats, we will stop the boats, we will stop the boats. And yet he didn't appear to have any real policy that would actually deliver on that commitment. And that became immediately apparent when the Rwanda policy, which he was pursuing, started to crumble within his fingers. So that's the first rule of politics. Don't raise the salience of an issue to which you don't have an answer. So he essentially tried to become reform light, reform being the party that has emerged under the leadership of Nigel Farage, that focuses almost exclusively on immigration issues and other related issues, cultural issues, and became a sort of a reform light party. And that has spectacularly failed as a political gambit, underscoring that what really matters if you want to be a national party is that you sort of accept the way the world is rather than want to endlessly hark back to how it was in the 1950s when Britain was a very different kind of country.
Absolutely. And Lord Johnson, I'm sitting here in New Delhi, and what is going in my mind right now and all our viewers is that what does Starmer's entry mean for India? What should we brace ourselves for, or what is it that we should now be pleasantly surprised and await in terms of Starmer's view, policy and direction for India?
Well, we need to wait for Keir Starmer to form his government and to choose the foreign policy team. Obviously, we have a shadow foreign secretary at the moment in the form of David Lammy, who's extremely experienced. And has been making a lot of effort in the India relationship. You'll have noticed that the Labour Party manifesto did not sort of revisit many of the old themes that previous Labour governments have emphasised in their relations with India, including, for example, the issue of Kashmir and so on. Keir Starmer, in his campaign, has made a concerted effort to reach out to the Hindu vote in the UK, visiting the Swaminarayan Temple in Kingsbury, and promising to protect the interest of British Hindus during his campaign. So he is making an effort on that score. At the same time, he can't ignore other minorities in the UK, including the Pakistani and other Muslim diasporas in the UK, who represent, 1.2 million voters. And it's worth noting that several independent members of Parliament close to those communities have successfully defeated Labour candidates overnight and are now represented in the UK Parliament. So he can't be ignoring those issues.
You're right about that, and Jeremy Corbyn being one of them. He is one on an independent plank, and he is now, yes, you're right, that he's been a strong votary of some of those constituencies and some of those thoughts that India and the Hindu community have been very vociferously opposed to.
Yeah, and I think it's crucial to understand that those MPs, and indeed Labour MPs who represent large Muslim communities in their constituencies, will feel that it's entirely appropriate for them to be vocal advocates of those communities and their interests in Parliament. And India should not confuse their doing that with positions of the government itself. It's a key part of our democracy that MPs represent their constituents of all shapes and sizes and do so entirely freely. And this doesn't mean that this is a UK government position, but simply MPs representing their interests in Parliament in a free democracy. And that's a really important part of our system. And it's often a source of misunderstanding between the UK and India. But it's vital that everyone understands that this is MPs doing their job, representing their constituents, rather than necessarily being government policy.
Okay. Let's see how that plays out in the next couple of months and couple of years. But I want to ask you this, that will that have an overhang on Starmer's economic and foreign policies towards India? Do you see that having an overhang?
No, I mean, the UK and India have been pursuing a trade agreement over the past 3 or 4 years. This, has been making steady progress. And I imagine that, a re-elected Prime Minister Modi in India, the new Prime Minister Keir Starmer in the UK will, at the right moment, for both countries, resume those conversations. There is a deal. It's not a massively beneficial deal in terms of what it does for the UK economy, but there is a trade deal to be done at some point, and I'm sure those conversations will resume when it's mutually convenient for both sides.
Absolutely. And final question to you, Lord Johnson, is that from here on, as the next change in leadership takes place in UK and some of these difficult questions get ironed out as well, in the next 3 to 4 years, do you see any, how do you see the Tories reviving themselves to put up some sort of a leadership contest going forward?
Well, that's a really good question. I mean, we're waiting to see how that plays out here in London today. There have always been different traditions within the Conservative Party in the UK, a free market tradition versus a more interventionist, big state tradition. There's been sort of previously big divisions between those groups who are more anti-European and pro-European. So, you know, the battle for the future of the Conservative Party, I'm afraid, continues. This is a rather inward-looking battle that is not of massive interest to the country at large, and it prevents the party from sending out a clear message to the country about how it's going to help bring the country forward and take advantage of many of the great opportunities that are out there for the UK. But unfortunately, it does continue again for the time being.
As we speak, the latest numbers that are coming in is that it's 389 for Labour. It's pretty much in kissing distance of getting to that 400 mark, something that Tories would have never wanted Starmer to achieve. But that's what it looks like, making those decisions more tougher, but also more immediate.
Yes, it's a very big majority and a testament to the very disciplined campaign that Keir Starmer's Labour Party ran during this election, and also highlights the weakness of the Conservative offer to the country, fueled by infighting, a very sloppy campaign, possibly one of the worst in British political history. And inevitably, after 14 years of government, the country was already crying out for change, and the appalling campaign certainly didn't help the Conservatives sustain a strong representation in Parliament.
What worked for Labour, Lord Johnson? What worked for them the best to get the kind of numbers that we are talking?
Well, I mean, first of all, just the natural time and tide of change. You know, after 14 years in office, and the Conservatives, you know, had started to become very inward focused on their own divisions. These were not the best advertisement of what the country could, for what the party could do for the country.
तो बेसिकली अगर आप एंड्रॉयड यूज़ करते हैं या आईफोन यूज़ करते हैं, डजेंट मैटर, आपको दोनों ही ऑपरेटिंग सिस्टम्स में बहुत इजी ऑप्शन मिल जाता है जहां पे यू कैन गो टू द सेटिंग्स एंड वहां से यू कैन म्यूट योर अननोन नंबर्स, या एंड्रॉयड में यू कैन ब्लॉक कॉल्स फ्रॉम अननोन नंबर्स. तो अगर कोई अननोन नंबर जो आपकी कॉन्टैक्ट लिस्ट में नहीं है ट्राइज टू कॉल यू, फोन वोंट रिंग, आप थोड़ा सा सुकून एंजॉय कर पाएंगे. फॉर अ फैक्ट आप ये काम व्हाट्सएप पे भी कर सकते हैं. यू कैन यू नो mute all your calls coming from unknown numbers. ये बहुत अच्छा तो है ही, but I would say it's also very important to avoid these scam calls, because sometimes it's just a normal spam, but sometimes it's scammers calling you, you know, approaching you, just trying to take some money out of pocket. तो उससे बचने के लिए भी it's a nice way for us to avoid any unknown numbers. जैसे मैंने just अभी किया, मतलब I'll turn on the setting. You can do it too. It's a nice tip. Please share with all your friends. मूविंग नेक्स्ट, बिकॉज हम गैजेट्स की बात कर ही रहे हैं, लेट्स जस्ट गो बैक टू द मोस्ट कॉमनली यूज्ड गैजेट दैट वी ऑल हैव इन आवर पॉकेट्स, द स्मार्टफोन. और अगर हम इसको एनालाइज करें तो आपको लगता होगा दिस इज जस्ट अ डिवाइस टू प्ले गेम्स, वॉच सम कंटेंट, या फोन पे बात कर लो या टेक्स्ट कर लो. बट यू नो व्हाट, there's a lot happening behind the scenes because this small little device is packed with multiple sensors. हो सकता है आपने सुना होगा अबाउट एक्सेलरोमीटर या जायरोस्कोप कि कैसे ये सेंसर्स काम करते हैं. जब आप अपनी गैलरी में किसी फोटो को देखते देखते जब फोन को रोटेट करते हैं तो फोटो रोटेट हो जाती है, ऑल थैंक्स टू एक्सेलरोमीटर. या फिर जैसे आप जब गेम्स खेलते हैं तो हाउ यू कैन यूज सम जेस्चर्स, ऑल थैंक्स टू जायरोस्कोप. बट इसके अलावा in a standard smartphone, normally we have from 15 to 20 different kinds of sensors working round the clock to make sure कि जो आपका experience है वो बहुत अच्छा हो जाए. I'll give you a few examples. For example, we have the proximity sensor. ये सेंसर स्क्रीन के ऊपर यहाँ लगा होता है एंड बेसिकली द आइडिया इज टू डिटेक्ट कि क्या आपका फोन आपके चेहरे के पास है या नहीं है. So when you pick up a call and put the phone next to your face, the screen goes dark. या फिर जब आपका फोन पॉकेट में होता है, the screen goes off and battery consume नहीं होती है. Second sensor is the ambient light sensor, जो कि आपके फोन में ऑटो ब्राइटनेस के लिए काम करता है बिकॉज इट एनालाइजेज व्हाट्स द एम्बियंट लाइट इज एंड उसके अकॉर्डिंग आपके स्क्रीन की ब्राइटनेस को एडजस्ट करता है. नेक्स्ट वी हैव अ बैरोमीटर. आपको लग रहा होगा बैरोमीटर का फोन में क्या काम है. You know what? It's all for the altitude and ये help करता है paired with GPS to give you a better accuracy and basically weather analysis के लिए भी काम में आता है. And finally एक और सेंसर के बारे में बात करते हैं which is the compass. Compass we all know because we all use navigation. So just to detect that which direction your phone is heading, compass काम आता है to give you the right navigation. And these are just कुछ sensors. इसके अलावा और बहुत सारे sensors हैं packed inside this tiny smartphone. Did you know this? If yes, then amazing. If no, then please let me know by writing at tg@ndtv.com. आपके पास में कुछ ऐसा अगर हिडन अपने गैजेट्स के बारे में कहानी है, I would love to hear all that.
Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV News app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and exclusive news from around the world and more. Download the NDTV app today and get access to the best journalism and storytelling on your smartphone or tablet. The NDTV app. News that matters to you. NDTV proudly upholds its legacy of trust and credibility. According to the prestigious Reuters Institute's Digital News Report 2024, NDTV is the topmost news platform in the country. Number one in both online and offline reach in India.
Nagrik Suraksha Sanhita and Bharatiya Sakshay Adhiniyam. Now these are the names which the lawyers are objecting to. For more details, let me go across to my correspondent Sam Daniel also joining on the broadcast. Sam, AIADMK, DMK, now lawyers all are protesting against the 3 new criminal laws, but they have come into effect and the centre is in no mood to change it.
That's right. They say the central government, although it has been adopted and now they become acts in force, they want the central government to engage with lawyers across the country to have widespread consultations with them first. To begin with, they object to even the naming of these 3 laws in Hindi, which they say is against the constitution. Then they say there are several aspects of these 3 laws which are sometimes against constitution, which requires widespread understanding and discussion with lawyers, with all the stakeholders. And particularly they refer to the criminal procedure code, criminal procedure law, which they say is not a colonial act as the government claims because it was passed in the year 70s after independence. And if at all the centre had wanted to bring about some changes, they need not have changed the name, but they could have tinkered and brought about these amendments. But they say they question the logic behind changing the name of this. And specifically they say there are several issues about which they are worried. For example, under the amended form, the accused can be taken under police custody up to 60 days, one time after the other, which was not possible under the earlier one. So this could actually open the floodgates of harassment and also could actually open the floodgates for more cases filed challenging and things like that, which will only complicate things further, especially when we have a large bulk of cases still pending. Secondly, they refer to the use and misuse of handcuffs. For instance, earlier it was banned by Justice Krishna Iyer in his judgment, but now they say habitual offenders can be handcuffed, and also family members who have several cases pending against them or filed against them. And this again they feel could be abused largely. And as we speak now, lawyers in the Madurai bench of the Madras High Court, they are boycotting work. The ruling DMK lawyers, or the legal wing, is also holding protests outside courts across Tamil Nadu, outside all the district courts. And tomorrow, they've also planned for a hunger strike in Chennai. And the legal wing of the opposition, the AIADMK, would also be holding protests outside the Madras High Court later today. But whether this will have any kind of impact after the centre had hurriedly passed it in the earlier regime without any discussion, that's something we'll have to wait and watch. Although technically these acts have come into force, the legal community is up in arms now.
Right. Thank you so much, Sam, for giving us all the information. So there is protest going on in Tamil Nadu against the 3 new criminal laws. We're stepping into a short break, but right after the break, we will tell you what's happening in Bihar and what the Union Minister has to say.
NDTV proudly upholds its legacy of trust and credibility. According to the prestigious Reuters Institute's Digital News Report 2024, NDTV is the top-most news platform in the country. Number 1 in both online and offline reach in India. Beating all its competition, NDTV stands for trust.
तो बेसिकली अगर आप एंड्रॉयड यूज़ करते हैं या आईफोन यूज़ करते हैं, डजेंट मैटर, आपको दोनों ही ऑपरेटिंग सिस्टम्स में बहुत इजी ऑप्शन मिल जाता है जहां पे यू कैन गो टू द सेटिंग्स एंड वहां से यू कैन म्यूट योर अननोन नंबर्स, या एंड्रॉयड में यू कैन ब्लॉक कॉल्स फ्रॉम अननोन नंबर्स. तो अगर कोई अननोन नंबर जो आपकी कॉन्टैक्ट लिस्ट में नहीं है ट्राइज टू कॉल यू, फोन वोंट रिंग, आप थोड़ा सा सुकून एंजॉय कर पाएंगे. फॉर अ फैक्ट आप ये काम व्हाट्सएप पे भी कर सकते हैं. यू कैन mute all your calls coming from unknown numbers. ये बहुत अच्छा तो है ही, but I would say it's also very important to avoid these scam calls, because sometimes it's just a normal spam, but sometimes it's scammers calling you, approaching you, just trying to take some money out of pocket. तो उससे बचने के लिए भी it's a nice way for us to avoid any unknown numbers. जैसे मैंने just अभी किया, मतलब I'll turn on the setting. You can
Congress MP Rahul Gandhi visits Hathras, meets families of Satsang stampede victims, says no politics over dead, highlights systemic deficiencies. Congress manifesto promise under length, 6 BRS leaders jump ship to join Congress. KTR points to Congress manifesto, reminds of anti-defection law promise. No immediate relief for Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal in CBI case. High Court issues notice to CBI on Kejriwal's bail plea. High Court seeks CBI's response by July 17. Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister Chandrababu Naidu meets Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman in Delhi. Key pre-budget meet as Andhra seeks a special package. Prime Minister Narendra Modi meets athletes ahead of Paris Olympics. PM's message to Indian contingent, aim for the best. Senior Olympians share tips with the first-timers. Labour Party sweeps UK polls. Keir Starmer set to be the new UK Prime Minister. Landslide loss for Tories. Rishi Sunak calls poll defeat. Sobering verdict. And now Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister is meeting Rajnath Singh. Now the meeting between Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister and Defence Minister Rajnath Singh is taking place in the national capital. Earlier, Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister Chandrababu Naidu met Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman and BJP President JP Nadda. We also have Uma Sudhir back with us. Uma, back-to-back meetings with all the Modi cabinet, and this comes when Andhra Pradesh is seeking a special package. Tomorrow there is a meeting between the two Telugu states.